Here's a piece I'm working on for a project. This is the back of a cod piece. Right now it's currently held together with just this Loctite super glue. It does a good job of holding it together, but if I were to drop this on the ground or hit this in some way, it might break apart. So we're going to use this soldering iron to strengthen the seams between it. Soldering irons are used to like fuse electrical components. It's used to melt a thing called solder, which is like a coiled up metal. So this thing gets very hot, and we're going to use it to do a bit of 3D printing welding. So as you can see, I have this cod piece in 3 parts: the middle, the left, and the right, and here's the seam line between them. This is what we're going to be working on, because this is on the inside of the cod piece. Here we have some spare filament that we're going to be using to fill it in. First, what I like to do is, with a light touch, just trace the seam of the print. You can start to tell it's melting just a little bit already, because like I said, this soldering iron gets very, very hot. So be sure to practice proper safety measures. Do not lay this on any surface you do not want burned, because it gets extremely, extremely hot. Cannot say it enough. Don't burn your houses down, guys. So first, I'm just here tracing it along. This will create a sort of narrow trench alongside the seam. Some of the plastic will start to well up on either side as it melts, so you can just push it back inside with the soldering iron, like so. But you want to have a decent sized trench before the next part. And like I said, this is on the inside of the print. You wouldn't want to do this method on the outside, because it doesn't look too great, and you don't want to mess up your look. Unless you're going for a welded look, then more power to you. You'll also want to keep in mind the thickness of your print. Mine here is about maybe 1/4 of an inch thick, so I have enough leeway to melt a little bit without going all the way through. And once you have a sizable trench, you can move on and grab your just some spare filament off the spool, and we'll begin laying this inside our recently built trench. So try and keep it as steady as possible, and you can melt the end of it to keep it held down, and then just gradually melt more plastic onto it. Once you have maybe 1 inch or 1/2 inch, you'll do this motion. You'll just slide the soldering iron back and forth along it. That'll melt the whole segment and give you a nice bond between the 2 pieces. So this plastic will be filling the trench that we just made, and this is what makes the seam a lot stronger. Is now, instead of 2 pieces that are just glued together, these pieces are now fused together with the same material that they're made out of. So right now I'm using PLA plastic. I think you could do this with ABS as well, but I haven't tried it, so feel free to experiment. But I'm just going along, rubbing the tip of the soldering iron back and forth alongside the filament and melting it inside the trench. There are some fumes while doing this, as you can see, and they're not really toxic because the the plastic isn't toxic, but you should do this in a either well ventilated room or outside, and you should probably wear a respirator or something to protect your lungs from the smoke if you're going to be doing this for a while. Something you could also try is grabbing some of your old supports that you've just thrown away, and you might try melting them in this fashion as well. This was just some extra filament that I had when I changed rolls, but if you had some supports laying around that were long and thin, you might be able to use them as well and put them to good use instead of just throwing them away. So we're about done. You can see the beginning has already cooled off, and if you look at the outside here, you can see that it is unaffected by our welding. It looks the same as when we started, so we didn't poke a hole through it, so that's nice. And on the inside we've got this nice weld line. Should add a lot of strength to the print to keep it together. This is great especially for cosplaying purposes, as if you're wearing this you might bump into stuff or want to sit down, and super glue doesn't always do the trick. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed.